It's really, really good to be on here with everyone. And I wanted to talk a little bit about what's been happening in Los Angeles, both the good and the parts that we need to really work together on. So, as many people probably know from the news, I live in Los Angeles. Our entire city has been going through, what sort of felt like an apocalypse. I think there's, one part to be an organizer and to be engaged and know people all over the country or the world that are dealing with climate crisis. And then to walk out your door and it smells like there's like a campfire like burning in your front lawn and there was ash just snowing down from the sky really was something like more than a wake-up call, not only to like the immense urgency that we face as organizers and as community members, but also to the point that we have gotten ourselves into, which is mainly at the hand of corporations and those who are trying to really destroy or just defund everything that would make our communities more resilient. There were a few fires that were the hugest ones that a lot of people heard about in the news. There were the Palisades and the Eaton fire. But because of what was happening in Los Angeles, which was, extreme dryness, because of climate change, we haven't had rain since October. We finally had rain the past few weeks. And then the Santa Ana winds and all of these different and utility companies and just lack of water and also protecting, utility infrastructure. And just the reality, which is, less of a critique, but something we need to also solve together, is that so many communities and urban settings that are built into wildfire landscapes is creating a space that we are putting ourselves in danger at wildfire because there is also nowhere else to go and we need our homes. And there were actually over like 350 wildfires that were like just jumping up in little places, and sometimes they would go out after the night. There was a huge one that I saw off the back of my deck that lasted for 24 hours. But we had over 57,000 acres burned, which is hard for me to even imagine the scale in my mind. But I think I live on like 1/100th of an acre. So just an immense amount of damage. There still are firefighters going into all of the properties now that the fires have been contained to try to understand who was tragically left and died in their homes or trying to get out. But there have been, I think, 29 fatalities confirmed by the coroner so far. And over 16,000 structures were destroyed, businesses, and so many homes. And what I wanted to talk about tonight, and then talk a little bit about what I loved was like reading the verses, which is something I don't often do, and really thinking about how it connects to spirituality. And like the text that like brought everyone here together today was, there's obviously this deep intersectionality, like Shally was saying, of poverty and war economy and militarism, racism and climate, like intersecting and clashing together. And all these people in the news would talk about that there was this perfect storm, and they only talk about the perfect storm as if it was this natural thing. They'd be like the perfect storm of like no rain and dryness and winds, and that's it. And we have to take a deeper look and really understand that the perfect storm is just as much this intersectionality of like ongoing and deepening climate crisis, housing crisis, poverty, which is causing people to have it be almost impossible to properly rebuild. And then corporations, like all of our utility companies here in Southern California being, lobbyers, but also prioritizing their mass wealth and their shareholders receiving profits in record numbers last year, rather than investing in community. Something else that we've seen here in Los Angeles is that over 50% of our entire city budget goes to the police. And even in the last, fiscal budget year, money was cut from the LA Fire Department, and it went actually to increasing the police budget. And we saw how that really impacted in an emergency where there are pictures you can see online of a side of the street during the fires of community aid organizations and neighbors coming out and setting up food and clothing and supply tents all down the street. And then you can see on the other side that, we spent so much of our money from the state also just putting National Guard out, barring people from, especially Altadena, which is a historically Black community, from going back into their homes, which is also, maybe for safety because the fires weren't contained, but, cops and military standing by with equipment and tanks and all of their gear doing absolutely nothing to like actually help the community members there. Was a really stark example of seeing the immorality of like where we are spending our money. where elected officials are prioritizing and seeing what really has caused people to be able to come together and heal in any way, was really the community themselves, people coming out and nonprofit, grassroots, mutual aid organizations that have been coming out by the hundreds, some long-term organizations. And like Sarah was saying, where they work, it's, so many people that aren't even organizations, just people being like, I see this need of something that needs to rebuild in my community. How can I come in and support it? So I've been able to meet and connect with many different organizations that are just, out of faith centers, a little bike shop I've been working with my partner, who has been collecting thousands of pieces of mutual aid delivery items that they're distributing all over to evacuation shelters. And the amount of community coming together outside of what the state has been doing, outside of the little support that FEMA is getting, outside of, how the official system has responded, the things that have been protecting the community are truly just, very, very bottom up organizing. It's the one thing that has been providing direct aid since the fire started, and it didn't wait for, a lot of time to pass until figuring out how to try to help people as they're rebuilding. The last thing I just wanted to say was, though it's so important that we're coming together, the organizing that happens after this is the most important thing. So many people, when the news cycle is hot, when, there's a disaster, it's so amazing that people come out really strong. But then once that dies away and the urgency and the media narrative stops, people, sometimes stop organizing, right? They respond for a few weeks and then they stop. So what we need is to have that momentum, that money, that infrastructure, that organizing to stay afterwards. And it's the next critical step in making sure that we're rebuilding and preventing future climate crisis, and not just helping mitigate the symptoms of this one that happened, right? Because we see that there's more and more and more that are going to happen. In 2024, there were 27 confirmed weather and climate disasters in the United States alone that exceeded $1 billion in damage. And we're all going to be impacted by this as it happens. So, with the biblical passage, I don't even really know what it's called, if it's not a quote, but I've read the Jeremiah one, just so people know. I'm from Freedom Shul of the Poor. I'm Jewish, and it was really beautiful though to read the first one in Jeremiah. I wanted to just say that the part where it was saying those who trust in mere mortals and whose strength only comes from their flesh, and whose hearts turn away from the Lord and trust in the Lord. To me, the Lord is maybe less like an entity or a being that is ascribed to religion for me, but the Lord is like the arc of our universal love, which is something that we have to fight for and to bring ourselves to understand that we're a part of. And that's what's been happening here in LA in the community. And that if we only trust in the rugged individualism or the flesh or mortality of our own impermanence, it causes so many of us to turn away from our communities. And we need to turn outward and inward at the same time, and really rely on our community and organize together. So my last thought was just, asking each person, whether you're in a place that's been impacted by climate recently, or you are preparing and trying to build climate resilience in your community, is really getting to know your neighbors. It's starting at the bottom up, right? We have to organize to be able to build our climate resilience, our resilience against poverty, the systems that are trying to break us. First of all, so that in the Bible verse, right, that if we're trees planted by the water, we have to organize so that first there's even trees left that can bear green leaves. There was something almost a little bit hearkening about the quote as a message of warning. And we have to organize so that water is actually going to run, that it would touch the roots of our planted tree. And then lastly, we have to organize and love amongst our people in our community and know enough people and fight together so that we can build an interconnected root system. Because if we're only one little tendril of a root, that we're obviously not going to survive alone. So thank you.